opportunity one day at a barn that I went to a lot. I thought I knew about seat, and I knew the mechanics of the seat somewhat, nothing like I know now. This was 20 years ago. And I kind of knew you shouldn't put go and whoa on at the same time when you're riding a horse. But as I was getting this horse ready, this thought came over to me, and I can't tell you where this came from. And it was as if somebody was talking to me, you know, and saying the words, I still remember this, "You are going to die." I just blew it off, got the horse ready, and there was nobody around. So I'm riding this horse, and I'm cantering him, and he was kind of going quicker and getting strong, and I felt like I couldn't really slow him down. So in my wrong kind of riding, because in those days I wasn't so clear about this, I leaned back, at the same time probably pushed into my stirrups, and he went straight up. Because what happened was, and now I know this, he felt the pressure, and it might have been hurting the pressure from his nose, I don't know. I still don't really know why. He went straight up. I fell more backward, and as I fell backward, I fell off because he reared. So he just went straight up. I was still kind of backward. I actually pulled him over. So I fell, and I landed on my back, and I still can shut my eyes and see this. He was a chestnut, and I see him falling straight down on top of me. And I said to myself, I am going to die. And for some reason, you know, if you believe in angels or meant to be, or this is your wake-up call, you have one more chance, I didn't die. It might have hit me. I was pretty sore. I don't know. I don't know why I'm still alive. I knew that I had created it. I knew what I did caused that horse to rear. Lucky I didn't get hurt. Lucky he didn't get hurt. I never told anybody. But I thought I would tell this story because I know other people have told me that that's happened to them. Right after that, I decided I was going to go to Germany because I knew that my seat had to get better. I had to really understand the causal relationship of how my body reacts on a horse, and I know I created it, and I knew I had to go to a place, and get more information. So I went off to Germany to go study with Melissa Sims. In those days, I thought it was strictly the seat, but now I know through studying learning theory, it was the combination of putting two opposing pressures on. Because my seat, because I leaned back and I pushed into my feet, was telling the horse to go, but my rein pressure at the same time was telling the horse to stop. The horse could not answer two opposing signals. The pressure on the bit, which unfortunately does hurt a horse when you have a hard pressure on the bit, caused the horse to rear because he could only answer the question. So he answered the whoa, but he went up, and that's when I fell and almost died. That was in 1996. My seat got amazingly better. I was on what we call the lunge line, where I was working only on my posture on the horse. And then when I came home, I decided I was going to become a lunging expert and lunge people. And I still do it. And I still believe the seat is your first principle, because you cannot communicate in a good way, a clear way on a horse if you don't have a very, very good seat, which has to be extremely still, so it can put the pressures on, have correct releases. And that's still, to me, my main priority of what I teach. But I spent the next 20 years studying more with other people. Fast forward now to 2015. So 20 years I've been a seat expert. And I know a lot about the seat, and I've helped a lot of people have better seats. And I feel really good about that. But it's always been, how's my seat affecting the horse? There was too many blurry signals, or, in modern dressage, they say things like, you must push the horse forward into the contact. But then you use the leg to ride the horse quicker. But then you use the leg to bend the horse. And in my mind, I'm like, wait a second, I'm using the leg to go to the bit. How does a horse know where the bit is? I'm using my leg to ride him more forward. What kind of forward? It doesn't feel good now. I'm using my leg to bend him. And I already was getting, there's something wrong here. So right then, of course, fate handed me the opportunity to train 2 baby horses, which is probably the most dangerous part of riding, is training, as Dr. Andrew Mclean calls them, naive horses. Now, one horse, his name was Adagio, he was just left in a pasture and he wasn't handled. And that is not a good thing for horses. They really do need to have companionship. And it was great he was outside, but the fact that he wasn't handled, he started getting kind of neurotic because he was so isolated. So the first time I take him out, he is so tense. And he's a big horse and I'm little. And I just had to take him from his pasture to a round pen where I was just going to work him and get to know him. A bird flew by. He was so scared of a chirping of a bird where he was away from his safe place that he leaped forward and came away from the bird into me. I was standing by the round pen and literally just missed me by inches, almost crushed me. And I was like, oh my God, I am dealing with something that might be beyond my ability right here. And I knew instinctively it wasn't about punishment, because I'd seen people get strong with horses and they'll yell and they'll go, knock it off, and and they'll jerk them around. And I knew that didn't work, because you already have a horse that's like this. It'd be like me yelling you, stop being tense. It's like, you can't stop something from being tense when they're truly afraid. And he is wired for flight, he's wired for fear. But what am I gonna do about it? If I can't beat him up, which I wouldn't do. And I did see one person work with him, and they had put the saddle on, and then they took what's called a flag, and they hit him as hard as they could on the bum, and then he took off bucking, and then they chased the horse, and I knew that was completely wrong. He almost fell down, he was completely frantic, he was bucking. What set that off? I don't understand why this horse took off bucking. I need to understand more. And so I can do it myself, but I need more understanding. So that's what set me on the journey, because I remember a friend of mine had talked to me about Dr. Andrew Mclean, and that he has done scientific studies of horses' brains and their cognition and why they do what they do, and I needed the why. And so that's when I first went to England to study with this lady, Wakelin, who had been a student of Dr. Mclean. From there, I've been to England several times, and then I got to work with Dr. Andrew Mclean and his wife in Canada and in Australia. The fact is, nobody wants to fall off a horse, especially somebody who has 2 hip replacements. And I don't want my students falling off the horse. All those incidents that seem like, out of the blue were not out of the blue. They all could have been avoided. And I was lucky I didn't get really hurt. When you're learning riding, you learn from a lot of different people, but it's not a system. It's not systematic enough. And what I've learned through really understanding how horses learn, I know how humans learn a lot. We're taught that as coaches. But to really understand the horse's cognition, the horse's ethology, his way of being in nature, and how he learns, I can stop at a place where I'm not communicating anymore and understand why, so that I can be much more consistent and also have a much better relationship every day, everywhere, even if the circumstances aren't great. And I think for safety purposes, avoid getting hurt, which is ideal, or avoid the horse getting hurt, and also always having a much better experience so that we all go home feeling really good about our experiences with the horse, and the horse comes over to see us every day. So that's, it's a consistency by having more knowledge-based or evidence-based knowledge the consistency of how to be around the horse and know when one day, with certain circumstances, it might not be a good day to ride. Or it might be good that day to get off this horse because there's just too much going on. So not about toughing it out, and definitely not about punishment, because now that I understand learning theory, generally punishment doesn't work. Once they learn the behavior, you have a way to talk to them. You know, we can't talk in English. Oh, if you buy a horse from Spain, you can communicate it with it. You buy another horse from Germany, you can ride that horse because it's not trained through German and Spanish. You know, there is classical conditioning. You might say good so or jawohl or, you know, para or whoa or whatever you're going to say in your language, but that's really you're communicating through basically your language of touch, your pressures, your releases of pressures, your rewards, and that's what horses understand. So I feel I really can communicate with the horses I work with now on a level that they can understand, so that we have a mutual language and it's not English. It's not a cognitive thing. You know, I know horses always liked it when I rubbed them, but I didn't know how much they really like it when I rub them. I don't know, when you have a feeling you can communicate to the horse and you just feel so good that the horse comes running over to see you, there's nothing better than that, because you want to be able to every day have a very similar ride. You don't want your highs, your lows. One day is a great ride, you can't repeat it. You don't know why you had a great ride. And days later, a month later, you have an awful ride. Because I know enough about the seat where I know part of it's my problem if I'm not on it. But you know, it's part of really understanding where the horse is coming from. Much more about that than more where I'm coming from.